Hello and welcome. My name is Roy Andersen. I'm the author of 7 books about how we can help children to learn better in school and why we have to find ways to prepare them better for the world that they will live and work in, which basically means that we need to teach them how to reason better and stop accepting them in the way they present information to us. This aspect of language is essential if we are going to help them to be able to defend their minds, their hopes and their dreams in a world that will be largely controlled by artificial intelligence. My first book is called The Illusion of Education, and quite rightly this examines why we do not teach children how to think and how to reason in school, and why we process them along in the skills that they've picked up from their parents and their social environment. I began this really as a PhD dissertation, thinking one day I would be a doctor. But really, the most important thing for me was not that. It was to find a way to reach the hearts and the minds of the parents, because it is the parents who really control the educational system by the way they raise their children for school and how they guide them through it with a sense of balanced discipline. So these books I rewrote like 100 times to try to make them into a story of the human spirit moving through a system designed only to process them. You see, globally, education works on a design created over 100 years ago to produce either the manager or the managed. Now, the managed were the children who go through school, where they're taught dualistic thinking skills, yes or no. It is only those who can and can afford to go to university, with all the implications behind that, who are taught real thinking skills, really learning to evaluate information for the responsibilities they will have. The rest are designed just to follow them. As we find today, the general citizen doesn't think too much. So this book called The Illusion of Education, it covers a number of aspects. I'd like to read the first beginning because I want to show you how this tells a story. Introduction. That you may understand what he learns and the way he understands it. Kierkegaard. My son is dyslexic, she told me, and the school won't do anything about it. Why not? I asked. They said they tested him, there was nothing wrong. But he can't read. I mean, he scans sentences and doesn't see the words. He can't learn anything. His mind works differently, but they don't agree. Well, you know, I suggested, dyslexia can be caused by problems in life. She didn't seem to hear me and continued in her own mind. It's wired differently, and they won't help him. He's at the bottom of his class and he has exams soon. Did you have any problems with your husband when your son was younger? He's a very violent man, she replied. We don't have anything to do with him now. She held her thoughts for a moment. He's bullied a lot. Other kids are always picking on him. Maybe the problem is not his brain, but his heart, I offered the thought. People tell your son to read this and write that, but inside he may be lonely, hurt and lost. He scans because he lost the meaning to take care a long time ago. There again, if he is worried about other children, his mind will be all over the place. The mother turned to look at me. Do you think so? She inquired. Let me explain why I do. And so I go on then to explain how the brain chemistry is affected by emotional concerns and how this can disrupt the student from taking in the information as it's processed, and so explains the inadequacy in learning. But the book also looks at why we have education and how it developed to what it is, and also very importantly how it is developing. We have many teachers leaving education at a frightening rate, and the accountants behind education are finding ways to replace the human teacher with software programs. This is a very great mistake. Children need to learn through the human experience, and software programs develop the reasoning ability, but they don't develop the wide holistic sense of information, understanding information, which is what they need to do to evaluate their, what we call in their intelligence. But also this book begins at the very end to consider why we think ability is inherited and why we have trouble to understand that a child's trouble to learn is just something that's developed through an emotional behavioral experience. And so at the end of this book, I look at the problems that the establishment had during the 19th century when socialism was rising, and they had to find some way to convince the society, civilization, that ability is inherited to create a kind of social political stability. So the child could only be as good as the social recognition of their father. And that leads me on to my second book, Intelligence, which explains and proves for the first time why intelligence is not genetically inherited. But my name is Roy Andersen, and I thank you so much for your time. The Illusion of Education. It explains the basis of why and how we need to change education to enable the child of today to be more able to control the world that they will live in by a higher developed sense of language and reason.